Hey everyone, and welcome to this Tuesday's episode of Recipe for Success. I hope that you're all doing well out there. I'm Laurie Sallarulo, your host of the show. And as you know, this is brought to you by Junior Achievement, where we are inspiring and preparing young people for success by teaching entrepreneurship, career skills, and financial literacy. And boy, has there never been a better time to teach financial literacy. A lot's been going on, and one of our guests that we have with us today, who I've been anxious for you to hear from, is none other than the infamous Tom Loffredo, the managing shareholder with GrayRobinson right here in Fort Lauderdale. And let's bring Tom in with us. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning. How are you?
How are you doing?
Just fine, virus-free, in the office, socially distant from the rest of the world.
So you closed your door. I could see on the front you had a special wreath on your door.
I have several wreaths. One of our partners, a former girlfriend, was in the wreath business, so I have a wreath for every occasion. The gator wreath is now on the door, Florida gator wreath, and also behind me waiting is the American flag wreath. Perhaps we'll fly that when we're all liberated from home bondage, whatever you want to call it. I'm not out in the streets protesting for it, but I got good news that the golf courses are open this weekend. So
are they really?
Yeah, so I can go out and stress myself out, more with my horrible play. But you know what? It's life is renewing. So hopefully that's a start, and we'll get everything else open around Fort Lauderdale when it's safe to do so.
Yeah, I'm sure. Our producer, of course, always has to make an appearance. Mr. Patrick there. He's going to go.
Good morning, Patrick.
Say good morning, Mr. Loffredo.
Good morning.
He's going to go get on the treadmill now, so then we can have breakfast.
I'm kidding.
He's lost 16 pounds through this. That's one thing in our household. We've been focusing on health.
That's a great focus. I hear you.
Thank you. So Tom, tell me a little bit about GrayRobinson and how you all adjusted. I don't think GrayRobinson, our law firms, were remote companies before this. So how did you transition? Tell us a little about that.
Certainly the bulk of the staff, non-lawyer staff, were not remote, other than perhaps the top level staff folks like our CFO and people like that. But none of our secretaries work remotely. None of our paralegals, sometimes they would, but the vast majority of our staff work here in the office every day, 8:30 to 5. And it was a transition. We were able to do it in less than a week, about 6 days. Had to buy a bunch of laptops, and because we had staff who were frankly concerned about coming to work every day. Then, of course, some of them, once they're able to work at home, then realize they were stuck at home with, say, their husband or whatever, and then suddenly they popped up at the office. But 95% of the staff who could work at home are working at home, including my assistant, who loves it and was very happy and appreciative. And there's logistic issues that go along with transplanting your workforce from here to home. Recording hours and technical issues, of course, but frankly, knock wood, it's been an excellent transition. I'm not aware of anyone in our entire firm that's been infected or what have you. So our social distancing here at GrayRobinson
is working.
So far has worked, at least to my knowledge. And lawyers could always work remotely. We had that ability. Many didn't, but we had some interesting transition for some lawyers who are used to, let's just say, having someone here at their beck and call every moment, get me this, get me that. They'd handwrite something instead of doing it themselves on the computer. And they've had to adjust as well. And, they've also done a good job. I'm not going to say their ages or what have you, but they were old school. And now they're new school, or at least they're newer school than they were before, and including myself, because I really working at home is, my dog's going to be on top of me and the TV's on and, what have you. So, but our office has stayed open the entire time with a skeletal crew, receptionist, office services, and whatever lawyers or staff want to come in. But there's so few people here that we're able to, comply with all the social distancing guidelines.
So how are you dealing with the clients, right? Servicing the clients. Are you doing that technologically as well?
No choice. Everything's being done remotely or technologically, either by phone, video conference, email, etc. I was able to mediate a case last Monday with parties in, I want to say, 5 different counsel and parties in about 5 different states here using WebEx. And we went 9 hours, and we probably had about maybe 5 to 10 minutes of downtime that were due to some kind of technical issue. Someone, like I started here today with no sound or what have you. But literally, it was flawless in terms of, other than those first few minutes, and getting done. And I think it's going to be this is a wake-up call for folks, or at least not a wake-up call, but an introduction to the future of business. Lawyers are used to being in court. They're used to being in depositions and in court for hearings or trial. I don't think we're going to have video jury trials, but there was just an article in the Daily Business Review last week that federal court and a judge I used to actually clerk for held a 2-day video trial. It was a bench trial, so it was only the judge deciding, but witnesses appeared via video. Lawyers did too. And of course, the parties had the right to consent to that situation. And it worked. And, so we're going to have to transition as an industry in the legal business. It's going to be, there's cost cutting measures here. We don't have to travel. You don't have to go, you can do video depositions where, the videos essentially are, the technology is free. And it will make things more, time efficient, frankly, because you take out, if I have to take a deposition in Miami, I've got to leave at least an hour early to drive down there, what have you. But now, it's going to be second nature to do these things via video. So
it sounds like it's definitely going to change the industry to some degree,
and not just law.
Everywhere,
everywhere, exactly.
I mean, you're looking at medicine, right? Telemedicine, although I still think I want to see my doctor in person, so she can look me in the eyes, exactly. Right, and see things or hear things maybe that she wouldn't.
Plus, you don't want to get gypped out of the experience of waiting for an hour and a half in the waiting room with sick people.
I was there yesterday.
That's part of the allure. Yeah. Who wants to wait at home watching TV for their doctor to pop up on a video screen?
Exactly. So I'm curious, Tom. So how this must have been, I would assume, and I don't want to assume, but I would imagine this has been a busy time for you, because as companies are going through changes and they're laying people off, I mean, economically, right? So many companies are struggling and having to make these really tough decisions. What are some of the ways that you're supporting these companies out there, and are they reaching out?
Right. Well, it's interesting. As this all hit as a firm, we looked at this, and there were practice areas that obviously are not in that situation, that are not killing it right now, because real estate, transit, things like that are more on the and there are no jury trials, and a lot of the judicial proceedings, although they're moving forward, they're not necessarily moving quickly. But areas like labor and employment, obviously, bankruptcy is starting to heat up, and also we have a whole group here that assists companies, small businesses, large businesses, with regard to government relief, the packages that Congress has put out, because there's so many different, grants, loans, PPP, SBA, you name it, but it's all being done very quickly, and there are a lot of regulations and procedures that have to be digested and then explained to clients who are desperate for loans to, keep open, make their payroll. So from my standpoint as a labor and employment attorney, of course, you get the, anytime there's a recession or a downturn, you're going to have employment loss. That's the big key. And in this situation also, we had at the outset several laws that Congress passed on an emergency basis, essentially, that said, look, Everyone's familiar with the Family Medical Leave Act, and that normally applies, under certain circumstances for employers of certain size. Hey, you get 12 weeks off unpaid if you have a medical emergency or a serious medical condition, or you're having a child, adopting a child, caring for someone with a serious medical condition. Well, Congress decided that we're going to have a whole bunch of people across the country who are going to be out of, there's going to be no daycare, there's going to be no one to watch their children, et cetera. So they essentially implemented an emergency FMLA that not only applied to employers, with 50 employees and more, as a traditional FMLA does, but to small employers, 10 employees, you name it, anything for 499 employees down. And it provided that same 12 weeks if you could certify that you needed daycare. Your daycare was canceled, or the schools are closed as they are now, and you have to take care of a child or a minor under 18. And not only that, normally FMLA is unpaid. This imposed requirement that essentially those employees who are eligible in that 12-week period will get 2/3 of their pay, normal pay. And the benefit to the employer is obviously, hey, you're being magnanimous and generous and compliant with the law, but also you'd be eligible for a tax credit if you go ahead and make those payments to the employees. So it's really a win-win. But of course, there's a million questions with that. There's another act that provides for 2 weeks of emergency leave under certain circumstances, paid emergency leave. And that can be used for the first 2 weeks of the FMLA, and then you go to the 2/3 for the next 10 weeks, but a total of 12 weeks, and there's caps and this and that, and exceptions for very small employers that they can show it, et cetera. So as you can understand, in addition to the typical layoffs or furlough questions and things like that, complying with these new laws, even though they're on an emergency basis only and will end at the end of the year, right now they're hot issues.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll bet one of the ones that you're starting to hear more about, and you mentioned golf courses are reopening. So things will start to reopen soon. I think we all hope, but safely. And so what do you see? Will the federal government get involved in some regulations about how we reopen? Will there be practice measures, right, that we have to follow as companies? What do you see happening with the reopening piece?
Well, what's interesting about that is that typically we would probably see the feds take the lead, either through the CD, with regard to workplaces. We would certainly have some guidance from the CDC, which we do have, and then ultimately OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, whose safety and health rules govern most workplaces. The current administration has been inconsistent with its application of federalism. Sometimes they take control and sometimes they don't, and they leave it to the states. Frankly, if I'm a governor, if I'm a mayor, I'm going to make sure that I get all the information I need, and to prepare my own rules and regulations or have them ready. But yes, there will be strict, and in fact, I'm working on a webinar now to put together the kind of the post-pandemic workplace and what you can expect. There's going to be, cleaning requirements. Masks are going to have to be worn. If you have an employee that may be more susceptible, maybe has autoimmune deficiency, you may need to isolate that employee in the workplace, not as punishment, but as protection. Right. And then, there's a whole, and now the CDC has just issued some moving forward requirements, and the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission has said you can test employees before they come back to work to ensure that they don't have the virus. Asymptomatic is most people are asymptomatic in those first 2 weeks, but yet they can carry and infect other people with the virus. So, there's a whole slew of regulations that are coming out. It's all new because workplaces aren't open yet, but it's going to happen soon. The pressure is building. The results of the social distancing are working, which gives even more impetus to the idea. Hey, let's reopen. We can follow the same kind of social distancing, kind of like we're doing now with the skeleton crew here, and keep everyone safe, but allow people to work, make a living, et cetera, and help the economy bounce back, because obviously that's, going to be the next big concern, or, after we survive the pandemic.
Yeah, I know parents are anxious in a lot of cases to get back to work. What do you, from a litigious point of view, what do you see happening when this all starts to come with the layoffs and the furloughs and all of these things? Do you expect, and with the reopening, do you expect that the number of cases or legal, whether it's complaints or legal cases, are going to increase?
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's inevitable. Anytime for whatever reason there's an economic downturn, there's going to be an increase in litigation across the board, and of course bankruptcies and that type of work, because there's less money available and more reason to fight for it. Let's put it that way. And there's job loss. Of course, to the extent that layoffs are because companies go under or because of the economy, those are decisions that are easier to defend, so long as they're done in an appropriate manner and don't disproportionately impact, one protected group over another. Right. I think the real litigation you're going to see involves business interruption insurance, large landlord-tenant movie theaters across the country that are now declaring bankruptcy or, will be in rent disputes with their landlords, or, just businesses in general. Most that the conventional thinking is that, to the extent you have business interruption insurance, it doesn't cover a pandemic. It doesn't cover a virus that forces the government to shut you down or forces you to shut down your workplace. Has to be, a meteorite has to, hit JA's headquarters. Right. Then maybe business interruption insurance, that's really going to happen. But this pandemic is real and it has real economic consequences, but it doesn't look like that's going to, and, it's early, but it doesn't look like that's going to, the costs there are going to be transferred over to the insurance industry, at least with regard to business interruption. And of course, if that did happen, if these claims were all covered, well, then we'd be bailing out the insurance industry because it would bankrupt the insurance industry despite all the assets they have, because, the claims here would be, hundreds of billions, trillions, whatever number you want to put on it. Think about all the lost revenue over the last, 6 weeks or so across the country, across the world. It would cause a collapse of the market. Yeah,
I would imagine. It sounds like you are busy. Probably busier. You're going to be busier in the next few weeks. And so I want to say thank you, because you always make time for us at Junior Achievement. Tom is one of our board members, for those watching, and has really been great counsel for us on employment and labor issues.
My pleasure.
And we appreciate your guidance. And so I of course recommend you highly to everyone I know. But so it'd be interesting to watch, and I would love to bring you back at some point in the next few months to kind of give us an update of what's happening on the legal side, right, as we re-enter, for people to hear a little bit about how things are going.
Anytime you want. It's easy to connect now on video. Now that
we got the technology figured out. So, so I always ask this question before I end an interview. You're a successful attorney here in town, especially in your field, well respected. What's your main ingredient to success, Tom?
Wow. Well, first of all, it depends how you measure success. Some people measure it financially, spiritually, romantically. I think at the end of the day, the most important thing is that you are true to yourself and that you, I feel like every day I want to contribute something. Whatever success I've had, I owe to being raised by parents from the greatest generation who went through the Depression and World War II and you name it. And, instilled in me what they thought was best in people and treating people fairly and being humble and et cetera. And I've benefited professionally from having fabulous mentors when I was a young lawyer, from the federal judge I clerked for to the two partners I worked for my first 3 or 4 years, an African-American woman who desegregated her high school way back in the 60s, who's, brilliant lawyer, and a gentleman who was a non-vet who, after being married and having children and working for the Justice Department, came out and his marriage fell apart. He lost his career in DC because back then that's what happened when you come out. and came down here, and he was the two of them together. I benefited so much from learning from them and their experiences as a 25-year-old kid who grew up in North Miami. I wasn't exactly worldly, and they were brilliant, completely different styles. And you have to develop your own style. You have to be who you are, be authentic, be real.
I love it.
If you're not authentic, you're not real. People see through that, and you're wasting their time.
Yeah.
And in terms of the practice of law, I just try to do everything I can to solve the problem for a client. And the problem may be bigger than the little issue they're facing that they call you about. So you have to look beyond that, see the structural problems they may have. An employer misclassifies an employee in terms of independent contractor employee, and we'll fix it real quick. Well, but you have 25 others you have to go back and fix. Let's fix that problem as well. So, and that's what gives satisfaction. You can assist a client in fixing problems so that their businesses go on and do even better and bigger and better things. That's a real joy I get out of it. So, recipe for success: be yourself, be authentic, and be good. Do good stuff. I mean, be a good person, and it all comes back to you.
Well, I think I would agree. You are both of those things, and that's what I think most of us, we all respect and admire and love about you. So, and you're a lot of fun too. I mean, that's always important, right?
Yeah.
And I love. There's a great Matthew McConaughey video where he does a commencement speech, and he said he didn't enjoy making movies until he just relaxed and had fun with it, and was stopped worrying about being number one or getting an award, and just had fun with it and just wanted to give back and make good movies. So to your point, exactly. Thank you so much, Tom, for being with us this morning. Stay safe, keep everyone else safe, and we're going to definitely touch back with you in a couple of months and see how things are going out there in the legal field. So
you got it. I'm here. Stay healthy, everybody.
You too. Take care.